predatory fish. One of the most awesome fish you can have right now. They are kind of a fish keeper sensation worldwide. And here in my place, Indonesia, these fish are always on the hype. And every time I come to the fish store, I can easily find one or two kind of these fish easily. And many Indonesian loves these kinds of fish. And I guess many of you like these kinds of fish too, right? They look awesome. And every feeding time, it's like a box office movie. But here's the catch. Even though these fish are popular, they are also controversial too. And in some countries, owning this fish can actually get you in trouble with the law. Keeping these kinds of fish may look fun until you realize you're in a great potential for big trouble, not only in your tank, but also with the law. But what makes them so controversial? And what makes them so popular despite being full of controversies? Welcome to Taj Mahal Aquatics, and let me show you the complicated background of predatory fish. Everything that makes predatory fish being loved and also being hated at the same time. Wanna know why they are popular but also full of controversies? Let's talk about it. So before we talk about the fame or the controversy of these fish, why don't we talk about how these kinds of fish became pets in the first place? How do these kinds of fish become aquarium fish? Why would someone even keep these kinds of fish? Believe it or not, these fish were not pets in the first place. They are actually food, like other fish. So yeah, back in the days, you will find them more on the dinner table than in fish tanks. Imagine back then, you keep these fish as a pet. Your grandpa would laugh at you because you keep the family dinner as a pet. But somehow, some people found something interesting with these kinds of fish. Some of these fish are smart. They had interesting personality and could even recognize their owner, which makes these kinds of fish feel more suitable to become a pet than a dinner menu. And that sparks curiosity for many people back then, and eventually, that curiosity becomes appreciation. And slowly, that fish that were supposed to be dinner becomes another man's best friend. And that's a little insight of how these predatory fish became a pet. Started out as a family meal, but eventually becomes an interesting pet. But when were these kinds of fish introduced to the hobby? We know how they become pet fish, but when did it all start? Turns out, the idea of keeping predatory fish is not something new, and it all dates back to the Victorian era, in the 1860s. It all started with paradise fish. Not something that was so interesting to be a predatory fish for today's standards, but at least we know they started all, and by the 1930s, entered the tropical era with Oscar that we know and love. No, not that kind of Oscar, these kinds of Oscar. And then by the 70s, we entered the monster fish era. And this is the era where predatory fish were really skyrocketed. We got awesome fish like arowana, red-tailed catfish, gars, beeshear, and many more to steal the spotlight. And in today's internet era, these fish also becomes an online sensation, especially here in Indonesia. Every time I see a monster fish video, those kinds of videos can easily hit hundreds of thousands, if not millions of views, which is pretty insane. And that's a little history on how these kinds of fish made into this hobby and becomes a sensation. And if you have some words on the history of the predatory fish? Feel free to share it in the comments. We all know that these fish are famous worldwide. But what makes people obsessed with these fish? Simple. They look awesome. Imagine you keep a fish from the show River Monster. That would be a next level of fish keeping, and that's what many people like. And it's not just about their amazing look, but every feeding time is a show to watch. Who needs Netflix when every feeding time of these fish feels like next level action movies? Just toss in some tilapia nuggets and boom, you have action movie in your tank. And sometimes, it's not always about their aggressive nature that makes them lovable. Some predatory fish have distinct personality, which makes them lovable. And some can recognize their owner, or even beg for food like a puppy. And that's the reason they are so popular. They look fearsome. Feeding time is always an amusing entertainment, and many of them are full of personality. And if you like some predatory fish, what do you like so much about them? Let me know. They are so popular and everyone loves them. Nothing could possibly go wrong with keeping them, right? Well, sure, predatory fish are awesome, but keeping these kinds of fish is not always sunshine and rainbows. In other words, they are full of controversies too, not only in the fish keeping community, but also in the local environment too, which I'm gonna talk about in a moment. And sometimes, the controversies are so bad that it gives the hobby a bad name. But what could possibly go wrong with predatory fish? Why are they so controversial and even manage to give the hobby a bad name? One of the most common case with these kinds of fish are misleading marketing. The store sells predatory fish as a small fish and not telling you how big they get. And the next thing you know, your awesome adorable little fish becomes a 3-feet monster. And now you tell me, how on earth are you gonna keep that fish? And no, this is not the only controversy these kinds of fish make. There's also another one, and this one is a serious one. This case is so bad that it kinda gives the hobby a bad name. If you think the controversy of misleading marketing of these fish are already bad, this one is worse than that. And in fact, this controversy is so bad that it gives the hobby a bad name. And that is, these fish are an invasive species. This is more of a fish keeper's fault. And when some fish keepers are incapable of keeping these kinds of fish anymore, they would do the most illegal thing they can do as a fish keeper. And that is releasing their fish to the local rivers. And the next thing they know, their fish destroys the native wildlife and ecosystem in the local waterway. The damage these kinds of fish bring to the local waterways is so bad that it not only severely damages the local waterways, but also the hobby as well. Because of this, many predatory fish keepers have bad names because of these cases. And predatory fish invasion is also a problem in many places, especially here in Indonesia. Over here, there's a super controversial case where a careless fish keepers release bunch of arapaimas to Brantas River, which is the dumbest thing a fish keeper could do, which may also bring quite a big impact to the Indonesian fish keeping community. And since these cases are so bad in many places, legal authorities stepped in. And do you know what happens next? When these kinds of fish makes a controversy so big, you know what happens next when authorities stepped in? Legal actions are taken for these fish, and many regions have strict laws or even ban on certain predatory fish, not because the fish are evil, but the keepers are dumb. And here in Indonesia, several species of predatory fish are strictly banned, like the arapaima, for instance. And if you have the audacity to keep these illegal fish, get ready to be escorted to jail. And that's what happens when a fish becomes so controversial that legal authorities take action. But what do you think? Is this legal action on predatory fish necessary? Or is it too much? Let me hear your thoughts. Here comes the big question. Should predatory fish exist in this hobby? On one side, they are awesome fish to have, but on the other side, they also cause some severe damage. And although it's not the fish's fault, the damage is enough to give bad names in this hobby. The fish is not evil actually. It's just some fish keeper that treat them more like a toy than a pet. Should these kinds of fish exist in this hobby? In my opinion, they still deserve a place, but with a caution. Keeping these kinds of fish are a full-time commitment. They need big space, proper care, and strong commitment from the owner that wanna keep these fish. And if you are not ready, don't get this fish, because the dumbest thing you can do is releasing them to the local waterways, like that one guy that releases arapaima to Brantas River. So keep this fish if you are ready to commit and ready for the challenges, and never treat them like a toy. But what do you think? Do predatory fish deserve a place in this hobby? Let me know. So there you go, the story of predatory fish. A fish that was both a sensation and also a controversy. A fish that looks like a fun fish to keep, but also a risky one. And now we know why they are popular, but also feared that legal actions were taken. And actually, these fish are not actually that bad, and to be honest, I kinda like my aquarium fish to be on the predatory side. But of course, I know these kinds of fish are a big commitment to keep, and you should know it also. Treat them right, and don't even think of throwing them to the lake. That is the dumbest thing you can do. And as long as you are ready with the challenges, these fish can actually be a rewarding fish to keep. And that also wraps up this video. And what are your thoughts on predatory fish? Let me know in the comment section below, and give this video a thumbs up if you like this video, and share this video to your friends who want to know more about predatory fish. Subscribe this channel if you enjoy the fish keeping content that I made here, because I can bring you more in the future. Thanks for watching my aquatic friends, and have a wonderful aquatic life. See you next time.